The police in Bayelsa State on Wednesday arrested a middle-aged man, Elijah Pentecost, who had detonated an improvised explosive device at the State Secretariat complex in Yenagoa. The explosion, which occurred early in the morning, caused pandemonium, alarming residents of the city.
The calm of early Wednesday morning in Yenagoa was shattered by a loud explosion that echoed across the State Secretariat complex. Civil servants who had barely settled into their offices froze. Some thought it was a transformer, others feared something worse. Within minutes, panic spread across the parking area of the Bayelsa State Secretariat. By the time security operatives understood what had happened, one thing was clear. An improvised explosive device had gone off inside a public government complex. The man behind it was identified as Elijah Pentecost. And his reason? That is where the story becomes both disturbing and complicated. However, it was still early when the blast occurred. Workers were just arriving. Vehicles were parked. Files were being arranged. Some civil servants were greeting one another, discussing routine assignments. Then, boom! The explosion erupted from the parking area. The sound bounced off the concrete buildings. Glass rattled. Dust rose into the air. People ran. Some left their handbags behind. Others rushed down staircases without looking back. Those near the parking lot screamed and ducked for cover. Within minutes, the entire Secretariat complex was in chaos. Now, at this point, nobody knew if there were more explosives. Nobody knew if it was a coordinated attack. And in situations like this, fear spreads faster than facts. Police officers quickly moved in. The entire area was cordoned off. Bomb disposal units arrived. The complex was sealed. When journalists from Arise News arrived at the scene, they met a heavy security presence. Armed officers were positioned at different corners. The Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit, EOD, was sweeping the grounds carefully, scanning every vehicle and every corner of the compound. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. The Commissioner of Police in Bayelsa State, Iyama later explained what happened from his perspective. "Early this morning, I heard an explosion," he said calmly while addressing journalists at the scene. "So I quickly picked up my walkie-talkie and called the control room to deploy all patrol vehicles to locate where the explosion occurred. While officers were still trying to understand the source of the blast, they apprehended a man within the vicinity. That man was Elijah Pentecost. According to the commissioner, Elijah confessed almost immediately. He admitted he was the one who threw or dropped the improvised explosive device. Now, pause for a moment. Imagine the tension at that scene. Officers standing at a safe distance, unsure whether the suspect was carrying another explosive. Civilians watching from afar. Fear mixed with confusion. Police did not take chances. The EOD unit was called in again. They combed the area thoroughly. And that is when they made another discovery. A second explosive device was found. This one had not detonated. It was carefully rendered safe by bomb experts. No casualties were recorded. No major damage was reported. But let's be honest, things could have ended very differently. Who is Elijah Pentecost? Elijah Pentecost is described as a middle-aged man. He is also an acid attack survivor from southern Ijao local government area of Bayelsa State. According to his own statement to police, he was bathed with acid some years ago. Since then, he has reportedly been seeking government assistance for medical treatment. He claimed that during the administration of the late Daipreye Alamie Sehia, financial approval was not released for his treatment. An acid attack is one of the most painful and traumatic experiences anyone can endure. Survivors often live with severe physical scars, emotional trauma, and social rejection. Treatment is expensive. Surgeries can span years. So when Elijah told police he carried out the act to get government attention, it introduced another layer to the story. When questioned further about how he obtained the explosive device, Elijah reportedly said he got it from Gabon. He also allegedly told officers that if anyone came close to him, he was ready to die with that person. That statement alone must have sent chills through the officers present. Security personnel kept their distance. He was eventually escorted away from the premises. Even after Elijah was taken into custody, the tension did not immediately disappear. Bomb disposal experts continued sweeping the Secretariat buildings, every floor, every corridor, every office. Workers were told to return home for the day. Authorities wanted to ensure the premises were completely safe before normal activities resumed. By evening, the area was calmer. Police maintained a presence. The smell of explosives lingered faintly in the air. Conversations among residents of Yenagoa shifted from routine political discussions to security concerns. People asked questions. Was this a one-man act? Could there have been accomplices? How did he get access to explosives? Is public infrastructure secure enough?
No matter the motive, detonating an explosive device in a public space is a serious security threat. The Bayelsa State Secretariat is a government facility where hundreds of civil servants work daily. It is a place where policies are drafted, salaries processed, and public services coordinated. If the second device had exploded, if more people had been present, if the timing had been slightly different, the outcome could have been tragic. So, while empathy is important, public safety must remain a priority. Another perspective to this issue is the mental and emotional state of individuals who feel ignored by the system. When citizens believe their cries are unheard, some may resort to desperate and dangerous actions. But here is the critical question. Does personal suffering justify putting innocent lives at risk? Should Elijah Pentecost face the full wrath of the law for endangering public safety? Or should his case be considered within the context of trauma, neglect, and desperation? These are difficult questions. Residents of Yenagoa expressed mixed feelings. Some were angry. They described the act as reckless and unacceptable. Others were sympathetic. They said the government should investigate his claims about medical neglect. One civil servant who spoke anonymously said, "We were scared. I thought it was the end. But when we heard he said he just wanted attention, I felt sad. Still, he could have killed us." That sentence captures the emotional conflict many are feeling. Fear and sympathy, anger and concern, relief and reflection. Security experts often warn that soft targets, like government offices, markets, and schools, are vulnerable when screening systems are weak. This incident may serve as a wake-up call for tighter security checks at public facilities in Bayelsa State. But beyond security infrastructure, there is also a social issue here. How many vulnerable citizens are struggling silently? How many survivors of violence feel abandoned? And what channels exist for them to seek help safely? When systems for grievance redress fail, frustration can escalate. However, and this must be said clearly, violence cannot be the solution.
Legally speaking, detonating an improvised explosive device in a public space is a criminal offense. Confession does not erase the act. Intent to draw attention does not cancel the potential harm. The law will likely determine whether Elijah is arraigned and prosecuted. At the same time, mental health evaluation may also become part of the legal process. Now let us ask ourselves, if someone confesses openly and claims desperation, should that reduce the weight of the punishment? Or does the seriousness of the act demand strict enforcement to deter others? These are conversations the judiciary, lawmakers, and the public will continue to have. One fact stands above all debates. There were no casualties. No lives were lost. No families are mourning. That alone is a blessing. The swift response of the Bayelsa State Police Command, especially the EOD unit, prevented what could have been a major tragedy. Commissioner Iyama's quick deployment of patrol teams ensured the suspect was apprehended before further damage occurred. This shows the importance of rapid communication and coordinated security action. Imagine living with acid burns. Imagine feeling invisible for years. Imagine believing that the only way to be heard is through destruction. That is a painful state of mind. Still, imagine being a civil servant who almost lost their life simply for going to work. Both sides reveal different forms of vulnerability, and society must find a way to address both. 1. Enhanced security screening. Government facilities should strengthen entry checks and surveillance systems. 2. Accessible grievance channels. There should be transparent, accessible systems where citizens can report grievances and track responses. 3. Support for victims of violence. Acid attack survivors and other victims should have dedicated medical and psychological support structures. 4. Community awareness. Residents should report suspicious activities early. Security is everyone's responsibility. 5. Mental health evaluation. Individuals involved in such acts should undergo professional assessment to determine psychological stability.
Wednesday's explosion at the Bayelsa State Secretariat could have written a very different headline. It could have been a story of loss. It could have been a day of mourning. Instead, it became a day of questions. How secure are our public institutions? How responsive are our government to vulnerable citizens? How do we balance justice with compassion? Elijah Pentecost's actions were dangerous, there is no doubt about that. But his story also forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about neglect, desperation, and communication gaps between citizens and authority. As investigations continue, one message must remain clear. Violence is never the answer. At the same time, silence from institutions can breed frustration. The path forward requires cooperation between government, security agencies, and the public. If you see something unusual, report it. If you are in distress, seek lawful channels for help. If you are in authority, listen before frustration turns into crisis. Because in the end, public safety is not just the job of the police. It is a shared responsibility. And Wednesday's explosion in Yenagoa is a reminder that we must all stay alert, stay engaged, and stay committed to peaceful solutions.